Coming to you from Music City, Nashville, Tennessee, this is the Quinn Spinn. Hey now, and welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, one and all, to a brand new edition of the Quinn Spinn. I'm your host, the Quinn, back here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Stitcher, YouTube, and more for yet another rousing and riveting installment of the official podcast of Underground Music Collective. You just heard Revel 9's All I've Become, our opening theme song since the great year of 2014, and it will be into 2023 and until the end of days. And we are almost to 2023. This is our first episode of December, the final month of 2022, and what better time to bring back a previous guest and start the little bit of year-end reflection here on the show. I have Lauren Gomance of SoulFit Counseling, who's also a yoga instructor, who teaches a wonderful class when it's warm outside at Church Street Park here in Nashville. Coming back to the show.
Yeah,
and
I love it.
First time on the glorious interview set.
I know, this looks so good. I love it.
Yeah, we've definitely grown up since April. The last time you were on was April, and that was not only one of our most popular episodes of the year, but one of the most insightful, I think, of this entire run. So glad to have you back.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. And we've technically done 3. But the first one is, well, actually 4, because we did my podcast too.
Right. Yeah.
But I still haven't posted. So
I was going to ask.
We've got to work on that.
Okay.
I've got to work on that. But it's good. I listened to it. It sounds good.
Yeah.
So
I remember that being a very good conversation. But yeah, the time you were referring to, the lost first
the lost
episode,
files.
The lost files they were actually lost files.
Yeah, they were.
We tried recording that episode that you all heard in April, the week before that.
Yeah.
And Logic just stopped recording about halfway through. We tried to start back up again, and Logic stopped recording. And it's like, well, we don't have time to figure this out today.
No.
So then you came back the next week.
And it was perfect. It was like divine timing. I feel like it was better.
It was better.
So.
It was better. We were able to curate our points better,
For sure. I just wanted to say shout out to you for doing yoga, and you show up for yourself every week, I feel like, except for the weeks that you were out of town, of course. But and I asked you this on my podcast, but what would you say to guys that are hesitant about doing yoga, or people in general that might be hesitant about yoga that do work out?
Do you like not having back pain? Because yoga, for me, I can't speak for anyone else's experience, but like my back's been all kinds of jacked up since high school. I started doing yoga with you, and like, once in a while get a little bit of stiffness, like, if I'm going too hard on like the powerlifting stuff, but like, it's not like a constant, is my back going to hurt today? Like once a week is all it's taken to like make me just feel a lot better, in the core region. And honestly, like, it's kind of fun to challenge yourself in a different way. Like, I remember the first class I came to, which was a few weeks after that episode,
after the podcast.
I remember the first night, like after that first class, my legs were so heavy. Like, my legs were like so heavy that like I was having trouble sleeping. But by the next day, I was good, because like I hadn't worked out in that way. I hadn't done yoga in a couple of years, and not that I was really doing it regularly, but like it's a nice palate cleanse to all like the power stuff and like
and I think it's cool, like you said, to do it maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, just to help your muscles and help your mental space. And there's no like right or wrong or good or bad, but I will say it seems like you're a lot more comfortable now than when you first started, and just feel a lot more flexible.
Yeah, definitely. I can do the crow for at least a couple seconds. Half moon gets me though.
Really? Does that one get you?
Well, you know what it is? Like, we do it out of that Shiva squat. That's where it's hard to get in a half moon.
It is kind of hard. Yeah.
Like, if I'm just going down and getting in a half moon. I demonstrate.
That's funny.
But I don't know if we ever like if I'm just going straight into it, but like if I'm coming into it from
we do
another
half
pose,
splits and then Shiva.
Then like because I've definitely fallen over a couple times.
Yeah.
You know?
I really don't notice you fall over. The one time I thought was hilarious, though, was when you said, I was like, do you have any that seem hard? And you're like, happy baby. I was like, what?
Seriously, like, no, it might as well be like the turtle
That
on
was
its back
so-
for me.
Yeah, you
'Cause,
were
like,
scared to fall.
I do. I roll too far over, and then I mean, you got to look up these poses
Yeah,
because I'm not
happy
doing them
baby.
right now.
It's funny.
But like, it's the like you're literally laying on your back, grabbing the outside of your ankle, and just kind of gently rocking back and forth. But for some reason, I always roll too far over, and I'm like on my side, and I feel like a turtle on its back. And I can't get.
You're like, how do I get out of here?
And I am. I'm
That's
like,
so funny.
okay, we're good. And then the force of that rolls me over to the other side.
You're like, oh shit, here we go. That's
And then
funny.
happy baby's over, and I'm happy.
Yeah. Then we're happy.
Yeah, then I am a happy baby.
Yeah, it's so good though. I just feel like it's good for mental health, physical health, spiritual health. Just a good balance, and especially I know you work out a lot, so it's not like that's the only thing you do.
Right.
But,
Yeah. It's good to just have in the routine.
Mm-hmm.
The one day makes a difference because
Yeah.
like I've noticed weeks where like I've missed yoga or
Mhm.
something where it's like, okay, well I got to do something, and I go like
Mm-hmm.
to the other parts of my routine, it's a lot of like functional or like even powerlifting. And I feel so much more stiff in a week that I don't do yoga
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to it. I'm kind of nervous for these next few months. 'Cause I
Yeah.
know, we're not going to be doing the outdoor thing.
Yeah.
And we're still kind of working. I guess you're still working. out the
Yeah.
tech
So
for
I'm
it, I
gonna
guess.
plan on doing it on Zoom, and
Yeah.
then people can follow that at SoulFit Counseling, and I'll post on there. And yeah, it'll be free still, but
Yeah.
I'm excited. I just want to do, even if it's me in my apartment or at like the pool house or something like that, so that people can still continue their yoga routine and whatnot from home.
Well, that's good because I've been telling people here, like, if I have to go 4 months without this and
I
then
know.
jump back in March, like that first day back is going to be another one of those where
Mhm.
my legs are heavy and
Mhm.
I don't sleep.
Yeah. And it's a good reset too. Even just the messages for me, especially like tuning back into whatever the message is that day, your intention. And I think that's so important for our life and in general. And what we talked about before this is setting an intention before your practice, before your day, before anything really.
Yeah, it really is calming. I mean, you've seen me come there
Yeah.
frazzled, and
Yeah.
then by the end, I'm like, okay, all
Yeah.
right, I'm good. Like there have
Me
been,
too.
you come into it with whatever you're dealing with that day
Yep.
or week,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's just that hour. My phone's away. It's in that little blue backpack that I bring. Like it's not away. It's not.
Yeah.
It's on silent, not vibrate, because I don't want to hear it. doing
Yes.
anything.
Yeah.
And like you say at the beginning, like take this time for you, and you just take
Mhm.
that time for you. And once in a while, because you're downtown in the
Yeah.
park, you get some noise.
Yeah. Or some wild people.
yeah. There have been some interesting things that you see, in the process of this. But like,
Yeah.
it just helps you remind yourself to refocus in those moments
Mhm.
where it's like somebody's speeding by in their
Yeah.
Mustang or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know what it's called.
Motorcycle
Yeah.
or maybe someone yelling. I had a lady, I wish you were there a few weeks ago, honestly, because we didn't have any guys and
Yeah.
I feel safer when you're there. But
Mhm.
she was screaming and cussing and it was a lot, but she was like, I'm doing effing yoga. And I was like, she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to, I think, one of the park people.
Oh,
But yeah, it got really odd. I was like, I don't think she actually wants to do yoga.
right.
So we've had some wild stuff. Last week, we had someone rapping in the back.
Oh,
You missed it.
I
You
missed
weren't
it.
there yet.
That was
but
last Tuesday.
It was funny. I was like, we don't even need the music. We've got him singing in the back.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And well, then we had that one guy who stumbled up from Broadway and decided to like share my mat with me.
Never will
I.
I ever forget that moment. I was like, sir, do you need a mat? And he was like, no, I'm good. And he's like on Gerard's
And
mat.
I'm just thinking, I'm not good.
I was like, you're kind of giving me this look like Lauren. And I was like, I don't know what to do.
I'm like, I didn't agree to this.
That was so funny.
Yeah, you do have some characters. come
It
through
is
the park.
wild, but that's it. It's exactly what you said. It's the constant practice, not just in yoga, but in life every day of putting that light around you, reminding yourself that this is your journey, this is your practice. Of course, we love people and we share this with people,
Yeah.
but that we have to tune back into our breath and into our practice, our journey, and not so much worrying about what's happening out here. Of course, we can notice all of that, but coming back to self, which is
Yeah.
crucial.
Yeah. So when the drag bus rolls by,
Yeah.
blasting,
They're like, yeah, party.
yeah, it's like, okay, that was a fun moment. Now let's
Now
focus
back.
in.
Yeah. Zen.
Yeah, that was the season finale, the drag bus roll. I forget what song was blasting, but I'm just
can't
like,
remember.
well, they're having a good time.
Maybe like 369. Damn, you're fine. And we're out here like, oh yeah, we know. That's so funny.
But yeah, never a dull moment at Church Street
No,
Park.
we love it. SoulFit counseling, yoga. We love it.
Absolutely. So I didn't even get to ask you the 3 standard questions.
Yeah.
But to remind our audience who you are and what you do and all that,
Mm-hmm.
those 3 questions are, for those who missed that first episode, who are you? What are your passions? And why on earth would you want to come back on
to the Quinn Spinn?
Yeah.
Lauren Gomance. I'm a licensed counselor and a yoga teacher. Love that. And then I have a private practice here in Nashville, SoulFit Counseling. And my office is here. Passions. I love traveling. I love my spiritual practices, and there's so many. And I think everyone's can be different, and that's perfectly fine. And then why am I coming back? Is that the last one?
Yeah.
Because you're freaking awesome.
No.
And you always show up for me, and so I'm showing up for you, and I just appreciate it. I love it.
Well, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And you mentioned travel. You've had the chance to do some traveling this year,
Yeah, I did.
And one thing that's been coming up on the show a lot lately, so if you're playing the Quinn Spinn drinking game, go ahead, take a sip.
Yeah.
is the value of having a recharge.
Yes.
Having the opportunity to get away, whether it's for a few days, a week, a month. And so you were in Hawaii earlier this year. You've been a whole bunch of places. And so I'm curious to know the role that plays in your life and how that helps you keep everything in balance so you can show back up for everything that you do.
I love that. So I've always loved traveling. And in the past few years, I've been really big on traveling by myself. I think it's good, again, to reset and to refocus on what's going on with you. So I went to Santa Barbara by myself. Loved it. That's in California. And then I saw my family a few days after that. For a wedding, and then I did Hawaii. But that was with family. And then I did Asheville, North Carolina. That was beautiful, such a cute town.
Yeah,
just to kind of reset and have some fun just by myself. And I just feel like those times, at least for me, that are separate from anyone else, are crucial to tune back into my journaling or praying, meditating, that kind of thing. I don't know why it can be a little bit difficult to do those things when you're at home.
Yeah.
I just feel like I can sometimes get in this grind mindset when I'm at home rather than when I'm out of my space. It's just a little bit easier to be in that.
Yeah, I can relate to that wholeheartedly because like one thing I've noticed about myself, I have no off switch in Nashville.
Yeah, you are a hustler.
but like to my detriment sometimes, because it's like someone will be like, hey, why don't you come do this? Or why don't you come to this show? Or not even a show, just like come hang out. I'm like, well, I have this to do. I have this to do. I have this to do. Yeah, I just can't make time to do anything other than things like that needs to get done. It is very hard. Like, even if I were to take a day off, or like a weekend off in Nashville, it wouldn't end up being a day or a weekend off. I would find something to do.
Yeah.
By noon, I'd be going crazy.
Really?
And I'd have to be like, I need to work.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I go somewhere, it's like, okay, I'm shutting off.
Yeah.
Like I'll do what I need to do to kind of keep the train rolling, but like that's my time to like step into a different part of my life. I go home a couple times a year back north.
I was going to ask you about that. And I think you've already done an episode on your trip back home.
We talk about it on the show. Yeah, I know with Foundation Mecca, we talked about that, a couple other episodes too, but yeah, whatever.
I could see just a difference in your energy, your positivity, all of that from whenever you were coming to yoga before you went back home. And then when you came back, you were just in this like powerful mindset and a lot more strength. But so tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, without going too far into detail, it's been an interesting transitional year, in a personal, in a personal aspect. And before I left the beginning of August, there were some things going on personally that, were weighing on me pretty heavily, in relationships and just dynamics, here in town. And I needed to get away. Yeah. And I was, I know I've talked about this on the show. This is another Quinn Spinn drinking game thing at this point. like, I was going to just go up, work Music Fest, come back, then go back 2 weeks later, go to the beach, and then come back again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just decided I'm just going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
I just stayed up in Jersey, Pennsylvania, hit a little bit of New York, both upstate, Hudson Valley, and even got into the city once, which was nice.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I was able to just tap into all these previous parts of my life.
Yeah.
I say previous, but like all these people that are still a part of my life. In all these previous haunts, I got to work the run of Music Fest in Bethlehem, which if you know the history of the show and this platform, we spent a number of years there. Again, to spend time with my family, things like taking my niece to Barnes and Noble. Like me and my niece Amber have at least, we try every time I'm up there or she's here to like get at least like 1 hour long car ride.
Yeah.
Just to talk. Unfiltered, we don't have to like placate it to the other adults in the room at varying viewpoints, and we could just like talk and just like.
How old is she?
13 now.
How crazy.
It's like, it's like having a little sister at this point. It's like, and in terms of mischief too, it's like having a little sister. We're actively planning how we're gonna wake up the house on Christmas morning.
That's funny. I love it.
Usually we just run in with pots and spoons and start 7 in the morning. But we're gonna spice it up a little this year.
So it sounds like it's just kind of a reminder of who Gerard has been in the past, and like that fun side of you, which you obviously have here too. But when you went home, it sounds like it was just a good reminder and a reset for you for that.
And just like a reminder of like the lives you've touched, and the people like, and the people that you've had the chance to connect with along the way. Music Fest in particular for me. I mean, that was pretty early on in the Quinn Spinn journey. Like within the first year I worked my first Music Fest. I went to school in Bethlehem, moved back to Jersey, and then that was kind of what started me working that festival and getting brought on year round was what started me to go to Bethlehem, start Lehigh Valley Underground. Like if it weren't for that festival, none of this would exist.
Yes, like 100%.
And so like I remember during the pandemic, in 2020, like because they're a nonprofit, and it's the entertainment industry. Everybody got just whacked in the entertainment industry in 2020. There was a lot of messaging about like help us actually get to 2021. Yeah. And I'm like, and ever since I had moved, like I remained in touch with the folks up there. They told me if I ever wanted to come back and work Music Fest, I'll keep you in the system. I'm like, oh great, thanks. I'll
you're like, sure, never.
But like, well, not never, but it was just like, of course you'll keep me in the system because I know what Music Fest is. And like, they need all, like all hands on deck, for the 10 days and even before and a little bit after. But when 2020 happened, it was like, I'm going to find a way to do that.
Yeah.
And so I went up, worked most of the festival in 2021. I already had plans at the beach, on the tail end. But then this past year, like I made the plan, I'm doing the full run. Yeah. You got me all 10 days and whatever you need before, a couple days after I can do. And it's just so good to like step back into that. Remember where you came from.
100%.
Reconnect with these people who like, you find out are still rooting for you.
Of course, yeah. And they've known you for such a long time. I think that's important too.
Yeah.
And so you can step back into this space rejuvenated and more excited. Like even just seeing you come back to yoga after that, which I was so excited to have you back, but you were just so much, I felt like happier, just seemed more powerful and in a good headspace when you came back for sure.
Yeah. Music Fest was just the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Because like there was, the couple weeks between Music Fest and my annual H.O.M.E trip, which I know I've talked about on the show too. Yeah. And like, it was just like getting to reconnect with different people, getting to just like, I met a bunch of my kids, friends' kids, who I hadn't met through the course of the pandemic, or maybe they've had them since, and I hadn't seen them in a couple years, and then getting to H.O.M.E, just surrounded by these college friends and all this just loving energy, come as you are. Like that's how we always were in college. It's like we were kind of a merry band of misfits that all found each other, college, and like there's still that dynamic, but there's such this strong bond, and it's just like to be able to be a part of that. We do that every year. 16 years strong. It'll be 17 in 2023, and to like I just remember that song Shade by Dirty Heads. I love it. I play it a lot. Yeah. And thank you. Like I just remember walking on to H.O.M.E Point Beach. The traditional end of this trip is you go to H.O.M.E Point to the lighthouse and the southernmost point, New Jersey, to end the summer. Right. And I just walked down on that beach and like, I don't know what it was, but the golden hour just seemed to be like a little more vibrant at that point.
Really golden.
And that song had just been released like the week before, that
Yeah.
whole album, Midnight Control, which is fantastic. And it was just playing in my head as I'm just like taking in this last moment of summer, and like whatever I had been dealing with. There's that line in that song Duddy says, which is all my troubles, you know, something to the effect of all my troubles seem like they don't make sense now.
Yes,
And
100%.
I'm just like,
that's beautiful.
I'm here. I've had this amazing experience the past 5 weeks, and now I'm going to go back to Nashville ready. And that was exactly why I took that time, because like I needed to come back here ready to go.
Yeah. And so what you said earlier, that's something I've been working on too, is not saying yes to everything. Or because you said sometimes here you feel like if someone asks you to do something, you almost just automatically do it. And so that's part of the spiritual practice and the therapy practice that I do of the functional adult, is like tuning into your body of what feels right, of is this a yes, is this a no,
Right.
and really being able to say what's best for you in a healthy and authentic way.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean, I mean, obviously, like, let's say if you never came back to yoga, of course I'd be sad, but you always have to do what's best for you.
Right.
So if you knew that your body was saying no to that, or your soul was saying no to that, then it's tuning into what's best for you.
Right. Yeah. And that reminds me, I've released a solo mission a few weeks ago where it's like your feelings are feedback.
Yes.
You know,
100%.
Follow your intuition, you know, and I think, you know, over the past few years is where I've really started to like come into that idea of intuition being a thing.
Yes.
And being a very important thing, an increasingly important thing. Like, you know, intrinsically what's right for you based on how it feels.
Yeah.
And I think so often, you know, especially as recovering people pleasers, we tend to
ignore
it because we want acceptance or we don't want some kind of negative consequence, the negative consequence that we imagine a lot of times from like a social standpoint, you know? But at the end of the day, like all that does by saying yes to things that feel like no's is you're denying yourself. You are really just robbing yourself of opportunities to find what is for you and bring yourself further into alignment. And you're falling out of alignment all the while.
Absolutely. One thing that my therapist said a couple weeks ago, the most loving thing that I can do for you is be completely clear and authentic. And that's so damn awesome. And it's also so hard and challenging at times, especially if you're scared that someone would be upset or something.
Right.
And again, like you said, if you have a history in childhood of feeling that you don't need to ever rock the boat, or that you're kind of walking on eggshells, then you can have a tendency to try to read what the other person wants you to say or do. And instead of trusting what you need to say or do and being there for yourself, you can just try to fall into what you think they would want. But again, like you said, it's inauthentic, and in the long run, it's not going to serve anyone.
Yeah. You've got to make sure your cup is full. That's what you're responsible for. And people are going to take that as they will.
Yeah.
And as we've both had a chance to discover this year, they're not always going to take it well.
Not well.
It might get blown completely out of proportion. But the fact is, like, were you honest with yourself?
Yep.
Are you okay looking in the mirror? That's what matters. You know, it's
100%.
People based on their own wounds and their own feelings and how they've dealt with those things and choose to express those things. They're going to take it how they will.
Yeah.
We're not in control of other people's reactions.
I don't know the exact quote, but Glennon Doyle says in Untamed, if you're going to disappoint someone, it damn well better not be yourself. And so that also resonated for this year. But yep. I love that.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny because I just saw a meme somewhere on Instagram before, like, you know, recovering people pleasers will be like, this is my villain era.
Yeah, literally.
And it's just setting healthy boundaries.
Yes.
And it's like,
yeah.
But that's the thing, is like when you're not used to that, or
you feel like it's so bad, but it's not. It's so healthy and it's so good. But you're right. You just feel horrible, and you almost have to check in with people that really love you, or your therapist, or whoever it is, to make sure, hey, like, I'm not overdoing it. So one thing on the chart of codependency, which I know we've talked about not doing a lot of labels, and I like that, is that sometimes we can feel less than if we have certain trauma histories or things like that. And so then if we go to a place of being a little bit more empowered, we can feel like we're doing something wrong, like you said, of not doing the people pleasing, etc. So yeah.
Yeah.
But check in with people you love and whatnot, and with yourself, really. But
Yeah. But if you need that reference point,
Yeah.
go to the people that you know
yes.
will be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not always going to like what they have to say.
Yeah.
But at least it's honest and it's meant to help, even if it
Yeah.
doesn't feel particularly helpful in the moment. I know I've definitely had instances where I heard something I didn't want to hear, and all the person was trying to do was steer me away from the dumpster fire,
Yes.
And, but at the same time, there's something, at least for me, like I need to learn the lesson.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. So another quote, and then I'll stop, is that a lot of people seek affirmation and not information.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do that and you check in with people that you know support you, but that will be honest with you, you can take in that data, that information, and then decide, like, okay, you don't have to take it personally necessarily, but you can grow from what they're saying. Which I think is really helpful for you to take that in and not just want people to tell you what feels good to you.
Right. But I think that takes a certain level of emotional maturity.
Of course, which is what we've been talking about not using the word narcissism so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's obviously a time and place for that.
Yeah.
But really what I see it as a therapist is emotional immaturity
Yeah.
most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's diagnoses that can cause someone, if they have a pattern of being like that all the time, then that would fit for them.
Yeah.
But I don't love to use all those terms a ton, like you said as well.
Yeah.
Because really what it is emotional immaturity.
Yeah. And it because like using those terms you can get to a point where you're overusing them and really going down a rabbit hole. Like even because I've been looking into what narcissism is over the past, several months. And I notice even on YouTube, like, okay, it's good to like watch these videos and to like help understand it and help understand these traits and how to navigate around them, when you're dealing with that, coming from another person. But even the way the content's presented on YouTube, it's very like splashy, like, buzzwordy, like narcissist, the evil narcissist. How do you defeat the narcissist? And it's like, is it really even about defeating the narcissist? Or is it about like taking your power back and limiting theirs over you?
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
like, I feel like people get so far down that rabbit hole now of like, oh, well, what is narcissism? Well, everyone's a narcissist except me. And then, you got 10 fingers pointing back at you. But it's just a slippery slope. I think.
So exactly what you said a second ago, emotional maturity is about holding space for your authentic self, what I call your functional adult, as well as the awareness of knowing that we're all freaking human here and we're going to make mistakes, but being able to take in what other people say and use that so that you can be the best version of you, the most authentic, loving, healthy version of you, rather than winning or anything along those lines, because it's not about that.
And it's not black and white.
It's not.
I think like anything else in life, pretty much, like what we term as personality disorders, and I'm not a licensed professional at all, but like it seems to me, the more I look into this and the more I experience people, like it seems to really exist on a spectrum.
Of course.
And people will be like so far into what you would call narcissism to where it's a personality disorder, but it's just they haven't done that work on themselves.
Absolutely.
They haven't developed enough. And you could say that across the board for anything.
For anything. Absolutely. I think that if you get into enough pain or you feel like there's enough disconnect from people that you love, then anyone can change. Or I feel like most people can change, but you have to want that. You have to want to be accepting, to look at your patterns, your behaviors that don't serve you, and then tune into what is healthiest for you.
And forgive yourself for the ways that you failed to show up, in the past. For me, another thing that's really come up this year, I've mentioned it on the show before. I was in a 7-year relationship for most of my 20s. And I hung on to a lot of resentment, I think for a long time. But, with other more recent events taking place, it kind of put that into perspective. And it's like it put into perspective the ways that maybe I wasn't showing up the way that I needed to, the ways that I was emotionally immature back then. And it brought me to a point where I don't think she'll mind me saying this. Like my ex and I have actually had a couple of conversations over the past, 6 to 8 months, like where it's like, hey, we're finally like, I gave myself a chance to own like, hey, I understand my part in everything, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And you just come to this point where it's like you realize where you were making things more difficult by perhaps experiencing that in somebody else, or just from life and just learning and just doing the work, and just really going inward on yourself and finding ways that you can be better.
Hearing you say that, I'm sure she respected that. And it's almost like there was probably a lot of peace that happened after y'all had those conversations.
Yeah.
And then too, giving yourself grace for what you did during that time period of you being together, because there could have been behaviors that you had that were related to your mom passing or different things that happened. And so it's that balance of giving yourself grace, but that awareness of having healthy behaviors and healthy habits and communication.
Yeah. Ty, who was just on the show a couple weeks ago, he and I were talking about this offline too, like this exact scenario. And we both started that relationship really young. I was 23, she was 20. Yeah. We spent most of our 20s together. And for two kids who started dating in college and had no idea who they were.
Babies.
No idea what they wanted.
Yeah.
No idea how to even start to figure that out. 7 years is a good run.
That's a great run. That's a really great run. And you really get to know someone.
Yeah. And hopefully you get to know yourself.
Amen. Yeah. 100%.
But I think too, if you don't also give yourself a chance to grow when you realize that drift taking place, which it did in that scenario for me, your growth's going to be stunted and you're going to become resentful. I feel like for me, that ended when it needed to, because we both got to go figure out who we were so we could show up better for ourselves first and foremost, and then see how that manifests in the world. She's married now. I'm super happy for her. Yeah. And I'm building my thing, but I don't know that either one of us would have gotten to this point if we had stayed together and if we had followed through on getting engaged, married. I feel like there would have been just a lot of stunted growth, bitterness, resentment that would have harbored.
I love that. And another thing that you said a second ago is that you had resentment, and that's something I've been able to really work on this year too, is allowing myself to feel whatever feelings I have. In the past, if I felt anger or resentment, I would immediately be like, those are bad feelings. Don't feel those. So now I'm trying my best to allow myself to feel whatever I need to feel. The goal, of course, is to not feel that eventually and to move through that. But it's if you just shove that down and try to push it away, I don't think that you can fully heal.
Right. It's going to come out in other ways. Those ways are probably going to be self-destructive.
Yeah.
Or destructive elsewhere in your life. And that's just not what you want to have happen.
And that's why I did the training for EMDR that we talked about last time in your podcast in April, which is getting us out of the amygdala, which is our fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, and helping our brain to reprocess so that we can feel all the shit we need to feel so that we can release it and finally move past it and not hold on to things. Because if not, then we're staying in that amygdala and responding from that. Yeah.
And letting go is so important.
Amen.
And I used to feel like letting go was a bad thing. I'm not being loyal to, my feelings of, but first of all, your feelings change. And also there comes a point where certain era situations, relationships have served their purpose and it's time to learn from them.
That's what I was going to say. They don't serve you or the other person anymore. And that's okay. But it's just kind of coming to a place of being open to that and embracing it and letting it be what it is. I think that's so crucial. Byron Katie has a good book called Loving What Is and allowing anything to just be whatever it is. But again, you have to have all the feelings first that your soul, your brain, all of that is needing to feel.
You have to let the storm pass.
Ooh, yes. That's a good way to put it.
You have to let the storm pass because, if you just, just like pressure in the sky or pressure in a bottle that you shake up, the more you stuff it down and the more it's contained, the bigger the explosion's going to be.
Yeah. So, and that's another thing I've been working on this year too, is tuning into my body more of what feels right, what doesn't feel right. And Mel talked about that in the podcast with Lewis. Did you like that?
Yeah, there was an excellent episode a few weeks back of School
Lewis
of Greatness. He had Mel Robbins on. Oh, what was that quote that I just I hollered when I was
oh my God, that was so good. Let's think about it.
It was is this person like giving positive additive energy, or are
Mm-hmm.
they a gigantic distraction?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, just thinking of it that way, like,
Yeah.
is everything around you adding or subtracting from your
Mm-hmm.
greater vision for your life?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
is it bringing you further into alignment, or is it bringing you out of alignment?
Uh-huh.
And like when she said that, I ran that back like 6 or 7
Yes.
times, that part.
Yeah.
'Cause,
And
like,
you'll notice too, like if you just sit with yourself and your body um away from everything else, you'll notice if something feels in alignment or not in alignment. And I think in the past, you and I both, and I'm sure a lot of people that listen to your show have tried to push themselves and they're like, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. We're going to make this work.
Uh-huh.
And it's just not.
Yeah.
No, you usually know pretty quickly. Your body, your intuition knows.
Yeah, and then that's the thing, is it comes back to intuition.
Yeah.
Like, but we have a habit of just denying that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like but you see the consequences of denying your intuition enough times, and you stop denying your intuition.
Yeah. Yep. Another thing Mel said was that she wants to change it from mental health to something else. She didn't say specifically, but I do think it's a balance of mental health, physical health, spiritual health, which
Yeah.
is what SoulFit is. But yeah, and then Lewis actually talked about that too, that's his number one, not his relationship with his girlfriend or anything else, but his number one is his health.
Yeah, his number one priority.
Yep.
Yeah. Because as that goes, so goes everything else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to be fit of mind, fit physically to really be able to give the most of yourself.
Yeah.
And, you know, for somebody like him who's got a platform the size of Greatness Media,
Yeah.
like, he's got to be at his best all the time.
Yeah.
I really admire that he doesn't drink or
Yeah.
do anything else, you know, to alter his consciousness. He never has, because like he's got to be that locked in, you know.
Yeah.
I wish I'd have him follow me around, you know, when I'm at the beach
Yeah.
for the weekend.
Be like, hey,
put
Gerard.
that beer down. Yeah, but like, you know, he just like, he's just got it dialed in. You know,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like, looking to people like that who are doing it, who are focusing on their health, on their well-being, not just for themselves, but so they can go out and be and bring the best version of themselves to what they do, and to the people they serve. Like, that's such a huge thing, you know. That's the older I get, like the more content I consume like that.
Yes, I love that. And I think that's a huge piece of advice for anyone that is entering a new relationship, is to continue your habits that you have. Like, don't stop going to yoga, don't stop doing your things just because you're in a new relationship, to continue taking care of yourself in whatever ways you have been before. And you might get pushback from that person. That might mean they're not the right one. Maybe you just need to communicate your boundaries, and you don't have to say it in a harsh way. You could just say, oh, this is just really important to me. And a healthy person will be able to receive that.
Yeah. You don't ever want to lose the things that make you.
No.
In a relationship. And we've all been there, I think, especially,
hell yeah.
you know, you compromise certain things that over time you realize are non-negotiables for you. You know?
100%. And I do think there's, of course, compromise, but first and foremost, it's taking care of the self, taking care of your health. And so that's another thing I'm super proud of that I've done this year is at the first of the year, I told myself I'm going to stop taking my ADHD medication that I had been prescribed in college and then taken in my master's degree. And so I just know for me personally, it's best for my body to not be on medication. I feel like food is medicine and yoga is medicine, all my spiritual practices, God, all of that. But I do think there's a time and place. And so I know a lot of my clients have medication and that benefits them. But I am proud of myself because I think that's been a big accomplishment for me this year. Yeah.
How do you feel before versus after?
Oh my gosh, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
I feel a lot more connected to people. There was something about taking ADHD medication that made you feel a little bit disconnected, I feel like, from other people.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of feel like numb.
A little bit more of a zombie. You're like you're so focused on what you're doing and getting done rather than connection, which I feel like is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, without connection, what's it about?
What is it?
You know, like you need... I have a good friend back home in Bethlehem, Lisa Robinson. If Lisa's listening, sometimes she checks this stuff out.
Yeah.
So she actually took photos for UMC when it was LVU up there for quite a long time. So shout out to Lisa. But she has a tattoo on her arm. and it says life is with people. And I remember there was a time before I moved here where I was like, I felt like I was struggling to connect. And, you know, she just has a very matter-of-fact way about her.
Yeah.
She's like, pardon my French, look, fucker, life is with people.
That's freaking
And that
awesome.
always stuck with me. You know? And even like
Yeah.
moving here,
Yeah.
you know, it's like I came here, you know, primarily for professional purposes.
Mhm.
Didn't know, I knew 2 people when I moved here, and they were
Mhm.
the people I lived with. And so it's like I've had her come back to that, you know,
Mhm.
pull up the sleeve,
Yeah.
look at the tattoo, like, because at the end of the day, like, what is building all of this if you don't have people to share it
Yes.
with, if you
Yeah.
don't have something to go back to at the end of the day,
Mhm.
you know, if you're just doing this purely just to say you did it,
Yes.
like it's going to be a very hollow victory no matter how successful you are. That's why
Mhm.
you have millionaires, billionaires who
Of course.
are depressed, who have all
Yeah.
kinds of
Disconnect.
mental health
Mhm.
struggles,
Yeah.
which manifest themselves into physical health struggles,
Mhm.
addictions,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. Because when you're not connecting to other people
Yeah.
and you're just so zeroed in
Yeah.
on what you're doing or who you are or who you're
Mhm.
purporting yourself to be, you're going to feel that disconnect.
Yep.
And people are going to feel disconnected from you, and it's going to lead to relationships that
Yes.
are very surface level,
Uh-huh.
not rich, you know, in terms of like the
Yeah.
quality of the relationship.
Yeah, and the thing is that you're really connected from yourself at that point
Mhm.
too. So the more that you're disconnected from who you truly are through your spiritual practice and things like that, the more that you're going to feel disconnected from other people. Yeah, so I feel like for me personally, not being on any of those kind of medications has helped me to feel like the most authentic version of myself, and I love that.
Yeah.
It's been really good.
Yeah. And I think there's a broader conversation too about, you know,
Prescription medications.
well, prescription medications. That's actually
Yeah.
not where I was going.
Yeah, oh,
But
okay.
yeah, but like about this whole idea of keeping up appearances, keeping up with the
Yep.
Joneses. You know?
100%.
That's kind of what that brought up for me, because
Yeah.
like I see it in this industry, you know, people come to town, you know, and they're young, you know, it's
Yeah.
their first foray into the industry, and somebody's trying to tell them what their art needs to be or who they need to be, how they need to present
Mhm.
themselves, you know, and I see a lot of artists go through that when they're starting out, and a lot of them get really discouraged because they're disconnected
Yes.
from who they are and why they got into this in the 1st place.
Mhm.
Now it's about pleasing the algorithm. Now it's
Yes.
about don't bore us, get to the chorus. It's not about creating what they actually came into
Mhm.
this industry to create. A lot
Mhm.
of people get burned out. Some give up, and then you know you do have some too who
Mhm.
eventually decide to take that control back and that
Mhm.
power back for themselves.
Yeah.
But if you're just keeping up this appearance, this image, this you know what it's
Yeah.
supposed to be
Mhm.
versus what it actually is,
Yes.
like it's robbing you of not only your true self, but connecting with the people who are truly yours to connect with.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Like you'll have more connections that are more authentic to who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And it was weird because I had 3 or 4 clients that came in that were saying that they wanted to work on getting off of their ADHD medications. And so I was their mental health part of it. Of course,
Yeah.
they also had a nutritionist and things like that. So yeah, I felt like it was cool. It was like God divine telling me like this is definitely where you're supposed to go next, and
Yeah.
this is something that is best for you.
Yeah. And by having that experience yourself, by knowing what it's like, I'm
Mhm.
sure there are adjustments that you have
Yeah.
to make, you
Oh
know.
yeah, it took a little while, and definitely eating really healthy helped a lot. But it took a while to get that full energy back and that drive, and that's why I really tuned into, okay, do I feel like yoga today? Do I think I just need to do a walk today? Because with some of those medications, you can push yourself to do things that your body wouldn't normally do.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's give yourself grace if you do decide, or any of your, obviously you don't, but any of your listeners just decide to stop taking medicine. Of course, talk to your doctor first, but give yourself grace through the beginnings of that, and tuning into what feels right to your body.
Yeah. There's always going to be an adjustment period or
Yeah.
something like that, I would imagine.
Mhm.
I've never been on medications
Yeah.
like that to know.
Yeah.
But like you take something out of the equation
Yeah.
physically, it's going to affect you physically.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, it's just like changing your diet. Well, I don't know if it's just like changing your diet,
Yeah,
but like,
I think in a lot of ways, yeah, because it is a part of your diet of what you're taking in.
right.
So whether that's people's energy or food or whatever, just I think overall that's something you and I have talked about for 2022, being conscious of our diet, like every single thing of our diet, not
Yeah.
just our food, but like taking in what's best for us people wise and podcast wise
Yeah.
or things like that.
The content you consume as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
all of it.
like the diet of consumption, in different ways, like are you watching the news and seeing how the world is terrible every night, or are you actually seeking out content that's not that offers things from a refreshed, objective perspective, right? And that's like, I know Foundation, I talked about this a few weeks ago on the show about how like the news is just bad for you. The media is bad for you. Like go out and seek like objective truth, and you'll realize and go out and talk to people, and you'll realize like the world's not that bad of a place.
Yeah. And it feels like black and white, like you said earlier, or fear tactics and stuff like that. And I would say to your listeners, anything that feels like fear tactics or such black and white opposites, then I think that that's probably most likely dysfunctional and unhealthy. Yeah, most of what's truly healthy and good is going to be somewhere in the middle, not quite so fear-based.
Right. Well, that's what I'm noticing too, is like a lot of the healthiest people in the public eye that I kind of look to, like they come at it from the middle.
Yeah.
They don't come at it from one side or another, super polarized, super opinionated. They come at it from a place of having conversations, from a place of discourse. And this could be any issue at all.
Yeah.
It's like, let's have the conversation. Let's pick out the truth, and then the rest is conjecture, bias, opinion. And I think in our media, I know in our media culture, it's all about what's going to sell. If it leads, it leads. I started in news journalism. I know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Like, and you see it all the time where it's like, okay, well, this network caters to this audience and that network caters to that audience. So of course they're going to trash the other side. When really there are no sides. The sides are a construct. And the truth resides, as it does always, most of the time, the vast majority of the time, squarely in the middle.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love how you went from saying I think to I know. And you kind of got fierce about it. You're like, no, I know.
Yeah. Because I do.
That's your soul knows. So that's, again, I do different modalities in the therapy that I do, but one of the main ones is being in connection to your functional adult, which is understanding your trauma history of your past. And a big part of being in your adult is really monitoring your spiritual connection. And how you do that is through being in moderation, being in the middle about things, and not seeing things so much as this is bad or this is good, and seeing like just what it is.
Right.
So.
And sometimes you're going to run into situations that are objectively bad.
Absolutely. Or people that aren't healthy for you to have in your life, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you should tell them what they have to do or that they're bad or anything like that. You can be honest with them if you feel like they can hear you. I do think there's also, if you've tried to communicate things to someone and you feel like they can't truly authentically hear you, then I think it would be unhealthy for you to continue having that conversation.
Yes.
And not good for you. So
you have to know that? You have to know when to walk away.
Yeah.
And again, I know we made this point before, but like another person's reaction to that is going to be their reaction to that. But you have to know when it's best for you to turn and walk away.
Absolutely.
And and that's something that for me, I think has always been a challenge. Again, because
process.
It's like, well, I care about this person and I don't want to. Sometimes it's just like, it's not even about whether you care about the other person or not.
Yeah.
Do you care enough about yourself?
Yes.
To preserve yourself, to show yourself the respect of, I will not tolerate this unhealthy behavior. This toxic behavior. And whether the other person realizes whether or not their behavior is toxic, that's for them to figure out. Everyone's got to go on their own journey. And, their level of emotional maturity will show, and it's going to show up in whether they acknowledge that and own that, or they project it onto you.
Yes, 100%.
We all run into various situations in our lives where, sometimes people will be like, you know what, I'm sorry, I apologize. And sometimes people will just spew it.
Yeah.
Because it prevents them from having to do that difficult work. And it is difficult.
Yeah.
But
for sure, it's so hard to own your shit. But I'll promise you that when you do and you sit back and you reflect, the people that are supposed to be in your life will 100% be in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes certain situations can take time.
Yeah.
But like you said, there are certain situations that someone may be not able to hear you and hear what's going on for you, or vice versa. And so in those situations, it's yeah, it's important for you to step away.
And when you do own your shit, it's the most freeing thing.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Because it's like, no matter what, like,
Yeah.
you can say what you want. You can do what you want. Like, I know the truth. I know
Yeah.
what my truth is. I'm living
Yeah.
according to that.
Yes.
And again, it comes back to law of attraction. You're going to attract better energy that's more aligned with who you are.
Yeah.
And what your vision, what your values are.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to trying to just please anybody.
Yeah. I saw this image in my head just a second ago, and I know you and I can both do this, or we have in the past, where we've tried to hold on to something, and it's like our hands are on this thing or the relationship or the friendship or whatever, and there's a fire underneath that's like lighting our fingers on fire, and we're like, no, like, let us just keep on, like, we'll try a little bit harder, we'll do this differently, or let me get a different grip on it. And really, our hands are on freaking fire, and we have to let that go. So I think for us, it's a constant practice of, once we notice the fire, like, to release it. Like, and again, that doesn't make anyone horrible or anything like that, or any situation. But yeah, releasing that and doing what's best for you.
Yeah. I just got the image of the dog in the house drinking the tea with the house on fire. This is fine.
Everything's fine.
I have been
fine.
I have been that this is fine dog many times in my life. But those days are over, folks.
Same. That's so funny. I love that.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, because like you don't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
But then after a while, it's like, well, I'm not. So I don't care if you think I am.
100%. And one thing that my therapist said as well, and that I also do in my therapy, is that when you model being in the adult and having those healthy limits and stuff, then you can model that to them. And that doesn't mean that they have to continue being in your life, but that's you being in your authentic, functional adult self. And so maybe they could learn from that, or you can learn from when someone else is being in that space.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But we're all responsible for our own learnings.
100%.
And that's really like the idea of control, you know, and what do we actually control?
Yes.
Continued coming up for me in 2022 is like, what do I control? How I show up for myself and how I show up for my platform and the people in my life. Other than that, I don't control anything. You know, I don't control the traffic. I don't control the weather. I don't control other people's responses or opinions. Why try to control any of that?
You don't control people that are rapping at yoga or that are coming by in a crazy bus. Like, that's just not ours to hold on to. And so we have to release all of those things. And it can be a constant practice, especially in relationship or friendship.
Yeah.
And especially for me in friendship, because I think that's something where a place that I've always felt a lot of safety in my life. And so whenever that's been something that has shifted, then I think that can be difficult. But again, coming back to what's your authentic self and what's best for you in that moment or that time period, and just continuing to follow that and do each next best step.
Yeah. And realizing that none of it is linear.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to revert.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to.
Hell yeah.
Everybody's got triggers. You know? I know that word has been stigmatized in some circles,
but it makes sense.
Everybody has them.
Yeah.
Like, and certain things will bring up certain feelings, and it's up to you to decide how you deal with those feelings. But you can't be too hard on yourself for getting triggered, as it were, for having something affect you. None of us are robots, as much as we try to be sometimes. Like, there are always going to be those things that push your buttons, and it's just a matter of dealing with them in healthy ways, letting those storms pass, not projecting it on anybody else, not
sitting with yourself,
not escalating conflict.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I love what you just said of not being so hard on yourself, because if I was like, Lauren, why are you still being triggered by this? You've done lots of therapy, you're a therapist, or you've done,
that happened to mine too.
Yeah, you've done 2 therapy intensives, you know this stuff, you know what's happening. That's not serving me. I think, of course, my brain kind of goes there for a second, but then to be easier on myself and be like, okay, you know what? It's okay. Are you feeling pain right now? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling just overwhelmed? Sit with that for a second. And again, it doesn't always feel great, but allowing yourself to do that and know that we're all human here. Just because we know the things doesn't mean that we're not going to have the triggers. And no matter the amount of work we've done, that'll probably always be there a little bit. So yeah, it's a process.
And listening to yourself is important there too, because it's like, if something has you triggered to the point where it's going to be harder for you to push through a task or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's best to leave that task until you can come
Yeah.
back to it clearly. You know, I know,
Yep.
you know, there were definitely points for me this year where it's like, I need to take a step back from this and deal with this thing.
Yeah.
So I can actually come back and like give more of myself to what
Yeah.
I'm actually trying to focus on right now.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like, especially like if you're going through like a rough transition,
Yes.
you know, the end of a relationship, the end of a
Yeah.
friendship, you've lost a job, which apparently a lot of people are doing right now with
Yeah.
the recession. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there are going to be those days. Everybody has days where they don't want to get out of bed. I
Yeah.
don't care who you are. If you say
Of
otherwise,
course.
you're probably not telling the truth.
Yeah.
Like,
Hell yeah.
everybody's got those days. But you need to allow yourself to feel that, but then you need to be kind enough to yourself to
Yes.
gently start to pull yourself up.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because if you stay in it too long and you start to cycle,
Yep.
and it's just like going down the narcissist YouTube rabbit
Yeah.
hole. It's like
Yeah.
you start getting hypnotized by your
Yeah.
own thoughts, or, you know, and that's where more serious conditions
Yes.
and you know,
Mhm.
adverse mindsets tend to develop is when
Yeah.
you stay in your head
Yeah.
with it and don't give yourself the opportunity to pull out of it with an activity, with some kind of social activity, by
Yeah.
focusing on a passion. Like, eventually you've got to pull yourself
Yeah.
up.
When I hear you say what you just said, it is in direct conjunction. Is that the right word?
I guess, yeah. Let's find out.
Yeah, well, who knows? With what I feel like is stepping out of the inner child or your trauma history lovingly. So let's say that you're laying in bed, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling down, or like you're not enough. Then that's probably a younger age. That's one thing I always do with myself and my clients is I say, how old does that behavior or that thought feel? And notice, like, if you are feeling not enough, that could be the really little boy or the really little girl feeling scared. And if you're my client, then you know that we go back and figure out what traumas could relate to that or be direct connection to that, but then not staying in it. We love the kiddo. We want to be sweet to the kiddo within us, but then we want to step back into that powerful, peaceful, functional adult, which is the crucial part that keeps us going.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to trace things back to their origins.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, that was,
so you can be sweeter to yourself and whatnot.
That was something I started doing in 2020 when the world shut down. You know, because we all had extra time to ourselves, and it just kind of started unbeknownst to me, like, because like 2019, it was kind of a victory lap for me. I'm like, new city, new life, new everything. I won. And then 2020, it's like, oh, well, now I'm here with my own thoughts and just whatever I wake up and do professionally every day. And it's like, I started to notice there were deeper layers that I hadn't, like, I had started to do the work before I moved here. And then once I moved here, I just put a pause on it. I'm like, I won. I'm good. My life is good now. I have money. It's great. But then like 2020 starts and you're just kind of left with like, ooh, I left off somewhere and I didn't finish that. You know, and you start to trace things back to like, you know, things about your social interactions, things about your relationship interactions, where it's like, where did that come from? And you start to trace it back to those earlier memories. And like you said something to the effect of like, how old is that?
Yeah. How old does that feel?
Yeah.
Or how old do you feel behavior wise? Or
And another way I interpreted that was like, how long has this been coming up?
Yeah.
Because if you assess that, then you can trace it back to the approximate age, situation, event where it happened, and you can take ownership of that. One thing, I did RTT, rapid transformational therapy last summer, 21, and it helped me like get at the core of some things, like, you know, that were responsible for the struggles I've had with self-worth. And like, I never really like correlated it to those specific events, but these were the first things that came up. And it's like, oh, why'd that come up? Okay, pay attention to that. You know, and like you start to realize like, wow, I've felt this way about myself or about this aspect of myself the entire time. How do I what do I do about that? How do I
Yes.
change that? You know,
How do I step out of that into a more powerful Gerard or Lauren or
yeah,
whoever?
or you out there.
Yeah, or you. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So, and I don't know if we talked about this last time, but it's kind of like jingle blocks. So,
Mhm.
whatever the activating event now is maybe at the top of the jingle blocks, but there's one much lower
Yeah.
that could be a core fear, which could be a fear of abandonment, a fear of intimacy, a fear of not being enough. A fear of that you have to do so much in order to matter, where
Mhm.
we all matter and we all have value just how we are, not because of anything external.
Mhm. And that's the thing too. I think a lot of our reactions to other people or other external stimuli
Mm-hmm.
are reactions to things from earlier in life
Absolutely.
that are just still weighing on
Ah.
us and haven't been healed yet.
Yes.
You know, like it happens all the time, you know,
Yeah.
where you project a trauma onto somebody and that trauma doesn't have anything to do with the person you're
them.
projecting
Yeah.
it onto.
No, it's yours.
You know, it's something else that's happened in your history.
Yeah.
Or even that you've perceived in your history that like you have stuffed down. It goes back to that idea of stuffing it down. If you do that, it's going to manifest itself in other ways in your relationships and your jobs, everything, until you actually face it. And it's the hardest thing in the world to do is to take that look in the mirror.
Yeah.
You know, like
absolutely.
to really realize that you're responsible for you.
And vice versa, their responses are typically about them and their trauma history. That doesn't mean that we have to figure it all out. That's not our journey to figure out necessarily. If it's someone that we love, we can help them get curious about it. But again, it's their journey. But another thing that I love is that whether that's the fear of abandonment or fear of intimacy, those are both really old. So adults cannot be abandoned, only children can.
Yep.
And so if you're feeling fear of being alone or fear of being abandoned, then that is a really old wound. Fear of not being enough, that's also a very old wound.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Insightful stuff.
Yeah,
I know
love
we are coming up on
Yeah.
time here, but we could probably go all
We could
day.
talk for like
Yeah.
a few more hours,
Yeah,
probably.
easily. Well, we'll do this again.
Yeah, we will. We'll have to do like a 2023 one.
Yeah, we'll definitely do this again. Lauren Gomance of SoulFit Counseling
Yes.
joining us. Before I do all the sign-off thingies, tell people where they can learn more about you online.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Lauren Gomance, and it's Gomance like romance. My grandpa made it up, super fun. And then SoulFit Counseling, and then my website is getyoursoulfit.com, and I have a therapy program that explains and works through all of this trauma history stuff, which I love. And yeah, so you can find me there.
All right.
I loved it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Yep.
And I look forward to yoga in the park again.
Yeah,
all
and
the-
Zoom yoga hopefully soon.
And Zoom yoga, but I mean yoga in the park with all
it's
the
better. Yeah.
the possible
Chaos.
chaos that can
Yeah.
occur, you know. That's what really gives it some flavor,
Yep.
you know. That adds it's the
So fun.
seasoning to the
Mm-hmm.
chili pot of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
This has been the Quinn Spin, 2 N's in Quinn, 2 N's in Spin. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Stitcher, YouTube, and more. Also, learn more about the show on Instagram at Quinn Spin Official. That's really the only active social handle. I don't want a TikTok. I'm not getting one. So there. Also, learn more about us at undergroundmusiccollective.com, our central hub for all things independent music, wellness, community, creativity, and more. You can learn more about UMC on all the socials as well. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Spotify's there, the UMC 20 playlist as well. You get 20 fresh tracks every week, plus the bonus track of the latest episode of this very podcast. Go to nashlive.live. We've got plenty of shows coming up in 2023. Very excited, kind of taking time to reload for the new year, but we're coming out swinging. Let me tell you, we've got some cool things planned, so make sure you stay tuned at Nash Live Shows on Instagram. Revel 9's All I've Become, our closing theme song, just like it's our opening theme song. Gonna take us out, just like it let us in. I'll see you next time.
Now